Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Elshammer, and welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films and wryly talk about them in the comments. The last film that we watched was part of a bunch of films that I got from Coronet, and this is kind of raw outtakes from a trip that they went to Europe. Paris and Rome, among other places. It's all silent, but it's all beautiful, original Kodachrome, camera original stuff. That was all artists taped together, all little white tape splices. So I have a machine that will actually run those without taking them apart, for the most part, so that we don't have to spend hours splicing stuff. So, yeah, 16mm films. That's what we watch. That's what we do here at AV Geeks. And I'm happy that you guys are joining us. Let's just go ahead. No, actually, let me save that. Wow. Kind of making up stuff as I go along. It's kind of the way we do it here. Let's watch this Coronet film about prehistoric times. I think it's Coronet. It might be Encyclopedia Britannica. We'll see. Enjoy.
Jimmy wants to be a scientist someday, and he likes to go exploring. Along the shores of the lake where he lives, he collects stones as a hobby. Strangest of all are small stone discs which have a hole through the center. Jimmy has learned that these discs were once the stem-like part of a simple animal that lived in an ancient sea millions of years ago. Resembling a flower, this animal was one of many forms of prehistoric life. Scientists can show us what these forms looked like from evidence they have found. For instance, this prehistoric kind of crustacean is called a trilobite. Geologists have found the remains of this ancient type of animal in the form of stone casts, which are one type of fossil. Fossils are part of the prehistoric evidence that has helped geologists reconstruct prehistoric times. From their studies of other kinds of evidence in the Earth's crust, many scientists estimate that the Earth is 2 or more billion years old. This time of about 2 billion years, scientists have divided into 5 great periods of time called geologic eras. During the first billion years, the Archaeozoic era, continents and seas were forming. In the next half-billion years, the Proterozoic era, simple forms of plants and animals appeared in the seas. The Paleozoic era of 300 million years was an age of underwater animals, including fishes. Then came the Mesozoic era, 125 million years, during which reptiles dominated the Earth. Today, we live in the Cenozoic era, which began 60 million years ago. During this time, appeared mammals, including man. Let's begin with the Archaeozoic era, about 2 billion years ago. During the first billion years, continents and seas were forming, and since that time, the Earth has been continually changing. There were periods when mountains were built up from the seas by volcanic action. Sometimes whole mountain ranges were built by volcanic action and by other slower forces, some of which pushed up rocks into great mountain folds. On the other hand, forces of erosion, such as running water, wind, rain, and ice, were wearing down the mountains and other high regions. The process of erosion is slow. The land wears away bit by bit. This process of building up and wearing down has been a continuous process. Even the oceans were changed in size and shape. Scientists think that during the latter part of the Archaeozoic era, in the warm seawater that covered much of the land, living matter appeared. Many scientists believe these earliest forms of life were tiny one-celled plants and animals, something like the one-celled amoeba. The long billion-year Archaeozoic era gave way to the Proterozoic era. During this time, there is evidence that there were more complicated forms of plants and animals, probably similar to the tiny crustaceans and simple green algae we know today. Following the half-billion years of the Proterozoic era came Paleozoic times. At the start of this 300-million-year era, there is no evidence of life on the land. But beneath the surface of the warm seas, the waters were teeming with prehistoric plants and animals. Among the early Paleozoic animals were the corals. Like corals of our seas today, they built hard external skeletons. Some of them lived in colonies. Among other forms of life in these ancient coral reefs were animals called cephalopods. Some of them attained a length of 15 feet and were masters of the seas. The prehistoric cephalopods were related to the octopus of present-day times. The octopus has no backbone and no outside shell. However, during Paleozoic times, many cephalopods lived in elaborate shells. Important animals in the seas of mid-Paleozoic times were the fishes. Fish are vertebrates, animals with backbones. Among the early fishes was the lungfish. This present-day lungfish occasionally comes up to breathe air, just as these prehistoric lungfish did. More suited to life on the land were air-breathing amphibians. Living both in the water and on the land, the amphibians were part of the world of plants and insects of Paleozoic times. Dense forests of ferns and other kinds of plants grew in the warm, moist climate. It is from the trees and other plants of these Paleozoic forests that we get much of the coal we use today. The forests grew in great swampy lowlands, and when the trees died, they fell into the water and were covered with mud. With the passing of millions of years, they were changed into the coal we find today. So this period of large coal forests is called the Coal Age. By the end of the Coal Age, air-breathing lizards had appeared. With the coming of these reptiles, the long Paleozoic era was drawing to a close. The next era, the Mesozoic, is often called the Age of Reptiles. It was a time of tremendous volcanic eruptions. Of all the life on the land, the lizards were among the animals that survived the violent upheavals. Gradually, gigantic reptiles came to dominate the Earth in the Mesozoic era, the Age of Reptiles. We call them dinosaurs, the Latin word for terrible lizard. This one had thick armor-like plates along its back and was about the size of an elephant. Such huge plant-eating dinosaurs were often attacked by vicious flesh-eating reptiles. But the fierce dinosaurs were not the only reptiles on the Earth. Reptiles with great webbed wings, related to prehistoric birds, were also part of the Mesozoic era. Once again, changes in the Earth's surface brought this period to a close. With the Cenozoic era came the Age of Mammals. Among the earliest mammals were some simple types, not too different from the hedgehogs of our present day. This sloth was one of the common types of prehistoric mammals. Among the largest mammals of Cenozoic times were the mastodons, whose bones we still find in many parts of the Earth. These great elephant-like animals were among those that lived during the severe climatic changes that happened during the Ice Age, which began about 1 million years ago. There were times when large portions of the Earth were completely covered with glacial ice and snow. Living on the tundra near the edge of the ice fields were the woolly rhinoceros and the huge mammoths. The great shaggy mammoths belonged to the elephant family. They were related to the elephants on the Earth today. In the same way, the horses that we know today can be traced to their prehistoric ancestors, small horses that roamed the Earth millions of years ago. The story of the horse and other mammals is only part of the evidence of prehistoric life that scientists are continually finding. Scientists estimate the age of the Earth at some 2 billion years or more. The first great era is called Archaeozoic, the time of the formation of the Earth's crust. In the next era, the Proterozoic, the waters of the Earth contain simple forms of plants and animals. During the Paleozoic era, animals without backbones were most important. About the middle of this time, fish with backbones became abundant. And near the end of the era, air-breathing amphibians and lizards appeared. Giant reptiles called dinosaurs came to dominate the Earth during the Mesozoic era, sometimes called the Age of Reptiles. And in the most recent era, the Cenozoic, mammals appeared on the Earth. It was toward the end of this era, during one of the warmer stages of the Ice Age, that man, the most highly developed mammal, appeared. The story of prehistoric man is the last chapter in the long record of prehistoric times.
So, general consensus is that that was Hugh Downs, who later did 2020, did other news things. Someone said he was the host on Concentration, but that voice just sounds so much like him. Unfortunately, they don't always credit who the narrator is in some of these films, but we're going to add reptiles to our list of it's too bright, to our list of pronunciations that don't sound right now. So along that with is protean, abdomen, vegetable, and then rolades, as opposed to rollades. Rolades. Was there any others that I left that I have forgot to put on the list? He also said trilobite, which when I was a kid, for my birthday, I got a science kit which had chemistry stuff, had a microscope, and also had a little tiny pickaxe for looking for gems and looking for whatever. So in my I went out the front door in Ohio, suburban Ohio, and went down half a block to where my neighbor had dug out his basement. I was going to look for fossils. And the first thing I did, I was like sorting around the dirt. I pulled out a trilobite fossil right off the bat. Boom. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore because I moved several times and it never got lost somewhere. But that was my brief stint of fossil hunting. And yeah. Anyways, let's see. What do we got? What do we got next? Let's go ahead and watch this film about insurance. Exciting film about insurance called Matter of Time. Oops, hold on.
This crystal ball doesn't foretell the future. It helps create it through research. Want a tough problem? Try and name one phase of our life that hasn't been changed by research and its byproducts. You say agriculture. What about the chemistry of the soil? Scientifically controlled crossbreeding, cross-pollination, or modern food merchandising, transportation. Thanks to research, this is a far cry from the Model T, and these numbers are just around the corner. But why limit it to automobiles? Modern industry is based on research. modern fiber textiles, electronics, plastics, atomic energy, whole industries that didn't even exist 50 years ago, all created by research. And then there's the field of medicine. From miracle drugs to miracle operations, the impact of research on sickness and diseases goes on. "50 years ago, the infectious diseases took a terrific toll. That toll has been reduced over 90%, largely through the results of medical research. Yet, oddly enough, the result of this progress, in one sense, has been literally heartbreaking. Heart disease has become our greatest killer. Even so, doctors are optimistic. Research reduced the infectious diseases, and in time it will be able to overcome heart disease. But in heart disease, a different approach is needed. With the microscope, we can see what causes tuberculosis, or pneumonia, or typhoid. But we can't see, under a microscope, what causes heart diseases. Unfortunately, the basic causes are still unknown. Today, there are three main organizations devoted to fighting the problems of heart disease. The American Heart Association, supported by public subscriptions, aids professional and public education, community heart programs, and research. The federal government, through the United States Public Health Service, gathers and interprets data on heart disease and aids state health departments in heart programs. But there's a third group, one that has a natural interest in combating heart disease. It got into the fight just when another kind of war was ending. Perhaps you noticed this item in the paper back in 1945. Life insurance companies to support heart research. Not only the insurance companies in the United States, but in Canada also. It pointed out that doctors were concerned about the lack of funds for research in this field. And it explains that more than any other business, life insurance is concerned with people's lives and the things that affect them. Since heart disease was ending so many of these lives prematurely, the Life Insurance Medical Research Fund was created as a public service for the benefit of all. Supported solely by voluntary contributions from the life insurance companies, the fund's goal was stated simply. The purpose of the fund shall be to make financial grants in support of medical research, the results of which are expected to reduce mortality and to improve longevity. At the outset, they decided the most urgent need was for basic research in diseases of the heart. Arteriosclerosis, or hardening of the arteries, hypertension, or high blood pressure, rheumatic fever, and congenital heart disease. The core of the problem is hardening of the arteries. None of the research programs will make much sense to you until you know what happens when this disease occurs. If you could look into one of these arteries, you'd see it had 3 layers. A loose outer coat, a tough middle layer of elastic fibers and muscle, and a smooth inner lining. There are 2 kinds of hardening. One takes place in the middle layer. The artery might get brittle, but if the size of the channel doesn't get smaller, doctors aren't too concerned about it, and laymen shouldn't be either. It's thickening and roughening of the inner layer that causes real trouble. Actually, the lining becomes broken in spots. These rough patches seem to encourage clotting. If a clot forms in a coronary artery, It cuts off the blood supply to a section of the heart muscle and may kill it. Now, the reason why 85% of heart attacks are not fatal the first time is because the heart has a way of doctoring itself. Small branches surrounding the area grow into the dying part and it gets a new supply of blood. It does this by itself. That's why doctors prescribe complete rest, to let this happen and aid in repairing the injury. To help in the work of overcoming heart disease, the Life Insurance Medical Research Fund began aiding hospitals, medical colleges, and laboratories all over the country and in Canada. To date, 219 projects in 101 institutions, all devoted to finding the causes of the various forms of heart disease, have been given grants of one type or another. From the beginning, the Medical Research Fund knew that a large number of keen, trained research workers would be the best means of obtaining its goal. So it has awarded over 270 fellowships to help young students to become qualified researchers in the field. The research program is fed by 3 major lines of study. The first branch is studying the structure of the heart and arteries both in normal and abnormal state. If you could go into their labs, the researchers would tell you their work is pretty broad in scope. They are trying to fill in serious gaps in knowledge of the normal circulation, gaps which block progress in understanding disease. Since life itself depends on an uninterrupted flow of blood to the tissues, such as you see here in the small blood vessels of a frog, these projects study the effect of slowing down the circulation by artificial means, by the use of drugs. The second branch and largest group of projects studies the actual diseased conditions, hardening of the arteries and high blood pressure. Here is a cross-section of a normal coronary artery, and here is the same artery affected by arteriosclerosis. Large deposits of cholesterol, a fatty substance, have been deposited to narrow the channel. Study of the role of cholesterol is one of the most encouraging leads, for if they can find out why cholesterol accumulates, they may be getting close to the basic cause of heart disease. Other research is working on the condition of high blood pressure. For some reason, the small blood vessels contract and narrow. The heart has to pump harder to force the blood through. In an advanced state, if these vessels rupture, say in the brain, you have a so-called stroke or cerebral hemorrhage. The escaping blood puts pressure on the brain with resulting paralysis. With high blood pressure, the circulation in the kidney often becomes impaired, and kidney function is then damaged so that waste products accumulate in the body. Promising leads suggest that the kidney itself may be the seat of the basic trouble in hypertension, either by forming a substance which causes narrowing of the little arteries, or by failing to remove a similar product of some other organ, such as the adrenal gland. A third group of projects is developing new techniques in diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. A new method is being applied to measure the work the heart does. This mechanism is called a jiggle bed. You can feel the force of the heart in your pulse, but actually, though it is too small to notice, the entire body is pulsing with the beat of the heart. This mechanism makes it possible to measure the force of the normal heart in order to determine how impaired a heart might be after a mild attack. By measuring accurately the work of the normal, we can find out the extent of damage. Research has also adapted electronic diagnosis. Using an oscillograph, which is basically the same as a TV tube, we can now get a more accurate picture of the electrical wave of the heartbeat. The fund has helped support development of this apparatus, often referred to as the mechanical heart. It has been developed for the purpose of shunting the blood away from the heart and lungs so that the surgeon can perform operations in this part of the body without having the area bathed in blood and with clear vision of the parts he is working on. All of these are but a few of the hundreds of different approaches toward the final goal of discovering the cause of heart disease. As work progresses in these major fields, separate projects tend to overlap and complement one another. Some of these promising leads will break down completely, but continuing research programs and new ideas will constantly step into the gap. Already we know enough about the treatment of heart disease so that most people with heart impairments can look forward to useful and happy lives. We also know you can minimize your chances of becoming a victim of heart disease by following this simple formula. It's moderation. Work, yes, but know when to quit. And as age increases, learn to stay within your strength. A balanced diet. Keep your weight down. Overweight and heart disease are bad company. Relax, and don't waste your emotional energy on things that just aren't worth it. A longer and healthier life in store for us all, thanks to the men devoting themselves to research. Research made possible through organizations such as the American Heart Association, the United States Public Health Service, and the Life Insurance Medical Research Fund. That's why doctors today are increasingly confident of success in finding the means of preventing and curing heart disease. And they will tell you, it's only a matter of time.
Only a matter of So that's what happens when I'm using this machine behind me, the telecine, and it loses tension. So basically at the end, if there's not enough leader, it will, or if a splice breaks, it'll pull it really fast across the sound head and it'll go right. So, kind of interesting. I want to show this film. I don't literally want it to be triggering, even though the trigger is in the title. This is a film made by the National Rifle Association back in the 50s. It's called Trigger Happy Harry, and it's about Trigger Happy Harry, who's going on a hunting trip and he's got some problems. So, I am not a fan of the National Rifle Association, and that's all I'll say. But this film is still interesting, just because it's a safety film. So, here it is. Trigger Happy Harry.
Seem an odd place to start a picture on shooting, but there is a logical tie-up. While it's possible that someday any one of us might have to shoot or swim to save his life, most of us take up these sports for the simple reason that they're fun. Swimming is fun for anybody. But since some of us aren't exactly Olympic champs, signs are posted telling where it's safe to play and where it's not. Other signs carry other common sense safety warnings. And the hero of 1,000 jokes and stories stands guard just in case. But worth many times his pound of cure is the ounce of prevention taken by learning how to swim. This is the real way to prevent accidents and guarantee that swimming is fun. Shooting, too, is fun. All kinds of shooting. Fun for expert and beginner alike. That's why it's the favorite sport of millions of people. And like swimming, it's a safe sport, so long as we know what we're doing. This means simply being careful to observe certain safety mottos drawn up by our National Rifle Association. Let's check them off now, one by one. And if we happen to find a shoe that fits, then let's put it on, so we can honestly say that shooting is fun and nothing but fun. The muzzle is often called the business end of a gun, which is right, as long as it's not monkey business. That point should be perfectly clear to this group of experienced hunters. And especially to Harry. Although he's earned the nickname Trigger Happy, he's been shooting since he was a boy, so naturally he knows all there is to know about guns. He knows how persuasive a gun can be in an argument. He's seen it in the movies 100 times. This technique is usually not necessary, and it's certainly not safe. This is better. Now the only man in real danger is Harry himself. Although his friends might be annoyed if they had to call off their hunt to rush him to a hospital. It seems nobody's safe with Harry around. Surprise, Harry? No wonder the boys call you Trigger Happy. That's the way. Always keep it pointed where it can't hurt anybody, even if it should decide to go off all by itself. There now. Everything's fine. Oh no, not again. It's not even safe to carry a stick that way, much less a gun. Leaving Trigger Happy Harry on what we can assume will be his last hunt with these friends, let's join up with this pair, just back from a good day. Uh-oh, it's Harry again. And a fine response this is to the offer of a helping. You see, Harry, among other things, a gun is not a boat hook. Here on the pistol range, we're safe from Harry and from other worries. We're safe because, despite the many guns in sight, among these experienced shooters, it's just a natural habit to watch your muzzle and observe the other necessary safety precautions. Now, take away the pistol. Substitute a rifle. And see that the same holds true of handling guns with longer barrels. It's like learning to drive a car. Conscious effort in learning to handle a gun correctly soon develops the unconscious habit of doing the right thing without thinking. It doesn't matter what gun you hold in your hands. What matters is how you hold it all the time. No, not again. But yes, Harry still points his muzzle at random. Now, Harry, they're expecting shots down around the targets. So this is okay. And in general, this is okay. But this is the way to kill somebody. So remember what we said. Watch that muzzle. I didn't know it was loaded is the most famous alibi in the world. and the most inexcusable. Take a gun, any gun, this rifle, for example. Its owner is rightfully proud, and his friend is rightfully skeptical, until he's convinced that it's not loaded. Why take a chance? Why try to remember whether we've unloaded when it's this easy to be sure? Now everybody's happy, and the proud owner can extract words of praise from his envious friend. Maybe now a bolt-action rifle isn't your hobby. Well, it's just as easy to check and be sure with a lever-action rifle, a pump-action rifle, a revolver, an automatic pistol, a double-barrel shotgun, an auto-loading shotgun, or what have you. Now, all these guns are equipped with mechanical safeties. These safeties usually are simply blocks which prevent the cock mechanism of the gun from operating. But with the gun open, as it is here, the gun can't possibly fire. That's worth remembering. Open action is the safest safety of all. The only time a gun should be loaded is when it's about to be fired. At all other times, let's play it safe. Let's get in the habit of asking ourselves, is that gun loaded? Is that gun loaded? Is that gun loaded? Is that gun loaded?
Is that gun loaded?
Even so, guns should not be left lying loose around the house. They should be locked up or kept safely out of reach. Yes, it's loaded. Luckily, no harm has been done this time. But there's still only one thing Harry can say. I didn't know it was loaded. Just as ball players train in winter, hunters can spend profitable hours in off-seasons getting acquainted with the woods, especially hunters bred in the city. Study the appearance and habits of your game so you'll know your target when that moment arrives. It's equally important to get used to seeing people moving around in the woods so you won't mistake them for game later on. The ability to distinguish quickly between man and well, look at this would-be hunter. Hey, stupid, what are you shooting at? Let's take a look. Oh, spotted a woodchuck, have you? Or have you? Look closer. A woodchuck, eh? That kind of mistake is mighty easy to make, but awfully hard to rectify after you've squeezed the trigger. Of course, when we are sure of our target, but then who needs advice in a case like this? Here's another case. It's been a long day and the taste of venison is dying on our friend's palate, and then at last, something's there. Could it be? Could it really be? It's Harry. Getting himself shot for this would be true justice. But unfortunately, a jury would be more apt to call it
manslaughter. Poor Harry. He can't even deck himself out in the right kind of clothes. Must think he's playing soldier. A soldier, of course, must take great care to camouflage himself, to blend into his background and hide from the watchful eyes of his enemy, to see without being seen. But this kind of shooting is different, Harry. The idea here is to be as conspicuous as possible, because being seen is just as important as seeing. In any form of hunting, we want to look as little like the game as possible, for reasons which should be obvious even to you. Now Harry's spotted something. Here's one man we can count on to be sure of his target before he fires. A lucky miss. But now we can add one farmer to the list of those who wish that Harry would never venture outside the city limits. The target's one thing. Equally important is what's back of it. Without even looking, we'll say it's Harry. Who else would use this very warning as a target when there's a public road within easy range? Good shooting, but where do the bullets go from here? There's a lot of open country back there. We can't see it at all, but our 22 cartridges create a danger zone for 1 mile back. It's hard to clear that much country. Remember that. A 22 caliber long rifle cartridge is dangerous up to 1 mile. A .30-30 is dangerous up to 1.5 miles. And a .30-06 up to 2 miles. And at ranges like this, unless you're sure of your backstop, there's no telling what you'll hit. Harry has an idea here, and a good one. He certainly could use a little practice. But he didn't bring along his X-ray eyes, and this is no clay pigeon. A shotgun may have relatively short range, but it does have some range. No way of knowing what's on the other side of the hill. Here's another good sport. Plinking, an informal type of shooting, is fun. But watch out. The greatest marksman in the world can't control the path of a ricochet. Now maybe these men have taken the trouble to make sure that the shed is empty. That's good as far as it goes, but the bullet goes farther. It's not stopped by this side, nor by the other. Here's proof. Watch what happens when a .22 caliber long rifle bullet is shot through these boards. Yes, only a .22. This is the reason we've got to be sure of our backstop. This business of the backstop applies naturally to all forms of shooting. And it's not just strangers we have to watch out for. Take this group, for instance. It includes 3 experienced hunters and Harry. Correction, it did include Harry. But being a rugged individualist, he decides to strike out on his own. 5 minutes pass. By now, the others have missed Harry, but they manage to struggle along without him. This time, it couldn't be Harry. He couldn't make that little commotion. So, without hesitation, and there he is, as we knew he would be. But this time, instead of making like game, he's appointed himself to play backstop. No harm's been done, but for that Harry can thank neither himself nor the man who fired knowing that one of his group was on the loose somewhere in the neighborhood. Hunting parties must stick together or keep informed of each other's movements, so they can always be sure of their targets and sure of their backstop. Trust Harry to show us the way not to hunt. Looks like he thinks he's back in the city, strolling along the pavement. Watch out, Harry, watch out! Oh, well, maybe he'll get by with a couple of bruises. At least the gun didn't go off in his face. But left alone, Harry would give it another chance. Lucky he's with men wise enough to recognize the danger and the need to check over the gun before going on. Keep it clean, Harry. That's the first rule that comes under the heading, Know Your Gun and Ammunition. The only safe gun is a clean gun, one that's in perfect operating condition. The few minutes required to keep it that way pay handsome dividends in the extra fun you get from shooting with a gun you're sure of. Well, what do you know? Even Harry. Wait a minute. Hold it, Harry. You, of all people, don't want a hair trigger. At least we don't want you to have it. The manufacturer knew how to adjust that mechanism. You keep away. And another thing, Harry. This whole operation looks to be out of your line. If your gun needs fixing, take it to a good gunsmith. You know, the way you take a sick child to a doctor. Now, Harry, you're not going to take another one apart. Well, that's a relief. Uh-oh. Even this looks suspicious. That's a .32-20 revolver, Harry. Sure, that cartridge fits all right. But let's see where you got it. That's what we thought. Take a look at that box. What do you think that notice is there for? The mere fact that a cartridge fits isn't enough. You've got to be sure it belongs there. There's a lot of different ammunition to choose from. Be sure you match the right cartridge with the right gun. Now you're on the right track. This is the place to get to know your gun and ammunition. This is where you develop confidence in yourself, in your ability to shoot and hit your target. Then you'll stop being trigger happy. You'll pick your shots carefully, and usually you'll get your game, and only your game, with a single, well-placed shot. Learn to shoot, Harry. And remember the pitfalls we pointed out. Watch that muzzle. Keep it pointed where it can do no harm. Don't trust any gun. Examine it and make sure it's not loaded. Don't shoot until you're sure of your target and equally sure of what's in back of the target within range of your gun. And know your gun and ammunition, what they are and how to handle them. There's nothing complicated about shooting, and nobody needs to feel hemmed in by these warnings. They're just little pieces of common sense which, put together, form a picture showing that if we know what we're doing and remember that a gun handled carelessly can be dangerous, then we can all continue to enjoy our sport without a worry. As we said, shooting is fun, but wait a minute. Hey, Harry. Okay, Harry. I guess if you can catch on, any of us can.
I can check that gear in a minute, so don't touch anything, okay? Hey! Get down from there! Now! Hey! Turn it over! What if it bumped that control by accident? You'd be mincemeat by now. What have I told you? You don't work on equipment when the engine's running.
Well, I told him not to touch anything. All right, I guess I wasn't thinking.
You weren't thinking? You mean you'll work on engines and machinery and not think of your own personal safety? Here. Shake hands with danger.
Shake hands with danger. Meet a man you ought to know. I used to laugh at safety. Now they call me Three-Fingered Joe. I was young and feisty, never did things by the book. Just let me get my toolbox and I'll take myself a look. I climbed up on a dozier with my mechanic's pride. Said, you can keep it running, friend, while I poke around inside. Shake hands with danger, meet a guy you ought to know. I used to laugh at safety, now they call me Three-Fingered Joe. Although I learned a lesson, I forgot it soon enough. The nicks and burns and scratches showed the young ones I was tough. Till another morning I was grinding on some steel. My other hand got careless and fed my skin into the wheel. Shake hands with danger, step right up and say hello. Grinding wheels and metal are what made me Three-Fingered Joe. I've seen mechanics burning and I've seen them take a fall just to save themselves a minute. I've seen them lose it all. I've watched them courting trouble, seen them take a chance and lose. They get careless for a moment and spend a lifetime with the blues. Shake hands with danger. Some friends I used to know. Compared to them, I'm lucky to be just Three-Fingered Joe.
All right, so we didn't get to the film that I had set up on the telecine. We'll get to that tomorrow. We have so many films, so don't feel bad. Yeah, so that was our little, when we show a safety film, I always like to bring up that. And the person who made that film, I actually just talked to him earlier in the week about coming on the show. And also trying to work on the person who originally composed the song, Jim Stringer, about having him on the show. It probably won't work that they'll both be on the same time, but and Jim has so much other stuff that he did over the years. I'd want to show some of these other films that he had something to do, including one where he's an actor. But the guy who did this remix version, I am hoping early October we'll have him on, where he can maybe play the song live, I don't know, but also could, he's a school teacher, and we could, a grade school teacher, elementary school, and we can talk about that, and what has replaced educational films for people that age. So that's stuff that's coming up in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in today. As always, it's great to show films to people who get it, or at least pretend like they get it. Maybe sometimes they don't, but that's okay. You don't have to get it to watch the show. If you like what we did and are doing, you can buy us coffee at buymeacoffee.com/avgeeks. You can also go to avgeeks.com and see other shows that we've done. And finally, hitting like and subscribe, if you have that ability on social media, is a great way to support us, because it somehow gives us visibility to other people who are similar minded to you. I don't know if that's okay, but having new eyeballs on this is kind of the goal. I very much appreciate your eyeballs, but I want more eyeballs to watch this stuff. So thank you so much again for tuning in. We look inside the film can to kind of give us advice. Sometimes it comes from the film itself. Sometimes it comes from a bored high school student who wrote it in the can, where they say love each other. Please rewind, and smiley face with eyelashes. We will see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Everybody take care. Have a good rest of your day. We'll see you soon.